Hello, I'm Toycat, and sometimes countries, just like people, aren't set up for success. A great example of this would be the Republic of Artsakh, a country that existed between 1991 and 2023. They had a people who had been living in the area for hundreds of years, they had a flag, they had a currency, they had hundreds of thousands of people, and a president, and even a capital, Stepanakert, where, fun fact, if you try to look it up today, you'll find something really weird has happened, which is that it's named something different, and it's fully a part of Azerbaijan. That's because Azerbaijan decided to take the territory, and the people that were living there already were politely asked to leave, I guess you could say, and this is something which is very, very intriguing because it represents the bad neighborhood that Azerbaijan and Armenia find themselves in. In particular, today I want to focus on Armenia's very rough geopolitical position because it's something that comes up time and time again, particularly right now when it comes to peace between the two nations, which seem like they're always going in great directions until they seem like they're not. In fact, literally just this morning, things got substantially worse, and so why is that the case? Let's explain the bad situation, the bad neighborhood that Armenia's grown up in, because ultimately you might believe that your people group are the strongest and best in the world, but your neighbors are one of the most important things to a successful country. If your neighbors are rough, that can be bad, and if you're an island nation, great, you don't have any neighbors, but what's really rough is when you're surrounded, entirely landlocked, by 4 separate countries, which might be 4 of the less stable allies you could have. In the case of Armenia, they are a landlocked nation, and so no access to the sea of any form, except via Georgia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, or Iran. Iran is a whole thing, of course, that we will leave to the side for now, meaning that there's really Georgia, Turkey, and Azerbaijan. Turkey has an interesting situation with Armenia, because obviously Armenia has this famous history in the people group that is notably Christian, in an area where religion is quite important, and also, notably, Armenians have a bit of a poor relationship with the Turkish people, because the Turkish people asked them to leave about 100 years ago. They asked them to leave so strongly we had to create a new word for it, and I'm certainly not on Jenny's side of saying the wrong words in a YouTube video here, but the truth is that Armenia has a very strong, rightfully so you could perhaps argue, grudge against Turkey, meaning that therefore the two easy ways to the sea are Azerbaijan and Georgia. Georgia, of course, is, it works to some extent, and Azerbaijan would be a great ally. The two countries should be getting along in lots of ways, except for all the ways they don't, because this is what Armenia looks like on a map. The clearest indication as to why Armenia and Azerbaijan are basically set up for war is the fact that their borders look like this. Ordinarily, this could be rough enough that, again, Armenia has no access to the sea without Azerbaijan. Arguably, Azerbaijan only has access to the Caspian Sea, which is just this area, but, there's no real access to the sea except via their neighbor, but even deeper, some of Armenia's territory is exclusively surrounded by Azerbaijan. And in fact, it's not just that way round, the reverse is true too. This Azeri village is surrounded by Armenians, and it's really, really messy when you dive into how does any of this actually work, and the answer is it was set up by the Soviet Union as an easy compromise over 100 years ago, and when the countries went independent, they weren't easily solved. One of those disputes was over the Republic of Artsakh, which in reality, even though it was fully independent and had its own president and capital, it kind of was heavily reliant on Armenia, and so when that eventually ended, it represented the kind of moving of the conflict towards more serious gains, mostly at the Azeri site. In fact, even the early gains that Armenia made in the early post-Soviet wars were actually returned. The Armenian Prime Minister returned 4 border villages that were taken in 1990, and they did so without actually getting anything in return. But thankfully, after Azerbaijan took these villages, after Azerbaijan took over Artsakh, thankfully, once that was all sorted, they finally managed to agree on a historic peace treaty. But even then, there's this rough situation where even when everyone agrees that, okay, you've conceded every possible valid thing, even when that has been conceded, I think a lot of people will be like, yeah, but why aren't we asking for more concessions? So, for example, Azerbaijan expects that Armenia will amend their constitution to eliminate territorial claims that are against what Azerbaijan believes are theirs, particularly the country/territory that they took over. And basically, there is this continuous expectation of concessions, which might look unreasonable, but when you look at Armenia, when you see the position that they're in, a lot of countries start to be like, yeah, Well, we think we can ask for that, and so why not? And ultimately, why do more countries not, sanction Azerbaijan? Why do more countries not get round the table and try to force them to stop? Notably, even Russia, which was involved in the fall of Artusk, where it built, they actually sent in their own peacekeepers, which I think is absolutely fascinating. Even with Russian peacekeepers there, even with so yeah, it was the Lachlan corridor, which was actually deliberately set up that way. But why is it that why is it that all of this stuff happens and yet Azerbaijan still manages to get off fairly fine? And the answer is the interesting game of geopolitics, which basically says you can be a little bit of a dick as long as countries require you, whereas if countries don't, it's a bit harder. And in the Azerbaijan and Armenia are very evenly balanced in lots of terms, but Azerbaijan notably has a natural resource. You know, it's everyone's favorite one, oil. If we look through the list of countries by oil exports, according to Wikipedia here, the top 5 are pretty expectable: Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iraq, the United States, and Canada. And if we scroll a little bit down, you'll see the UK at 17 and Azerbaijan at 21, both above Venezuela, which is, wow, they have the most oil in the world. And so, having a ton of oil, having that oil be particularly useful for not being reliant on Russia, which Georgia and Turkey both find it to be, means that you can have a bit more of a privileged position in the region, and especially if you use that money to buy the right things, you end up in a situation where Azerbaijan and Armenia, really, I would say the Caucasus Free, are all on roughly the same terms, but Armenia ends up being substantially worse off in all of those cases because, again, the truth is it doesn't matter about the people group or the history or anything like that. If one side has a bunch of leverage, that will be, I guess this is the realpolitik view of what is happening there. Even though there are continuous calls for peace between the two nations, the truth is it looks as though it's always going to continuously fall apart. Azerbaijan is accusing Armenia of preparing for war. They say they're spreading disinformation, but then this lovely trustable website says that Armenia fired on Azerbaijan's positions just this morning. To be fair, this is an Azeri news website, and their only source is Azerbaijan's Ministry of Defense. But basically, a war looks like it will be restarting up, or at least the ceasefire looks like it will be ending, because I think if you are a country that is in a situation like this, you are stuck in a very hard realpolitik situation of, okay, do you concede a lot to your neighbor to get them to stop for now? Maybe not ideal. What about on the other side with Turkey? Armenia and Turkey do not have proper diplomatic relations because of that whole impolitely, I guess they would say, asking people to leave in a very murderous manner thing. But like that whole issue between Turkey and Armenia means that Armenia's best access to the world is kind of locked off right now, which means they have to use Iran or Georgia. And again, nothing against Georgia, nothing against Iran, I don't assume. But ultimately they are not the best and easiest of partners to work with. And so, Armenia ends up continuously trapped in a situation that seemingly gets worse all the time. But yeah, if you're worried that something is about to erupt, I would say probably not erupt, but it does seem like there is a long and continuous history of this going in this direction. And I guess it's wild because the reason most people don't care, unlike they do with, say, Ukraine and Russia or with the other situation, is because ultimately it doesn't easily fit into political camps. You can't easily be like, oh yeah, oppressor narratives or anything else like that. And it's a bit of a bummer because, again, the ideal world would be a world where Armenians and Azeris could live perfectly in peace and never have to deal with each other, and especially not have to kill each other's people over silly pieces of land. But the situation that they were set up into basically makes that inevitable. Again, so this is Azerbaijan. There is a whole portion of the country which is entirely separated from the rest of Azerbaijan, so they have to go through Armenia. The two countries are always going to be very, very close to each other that way, and I feel like, what is the easiest solution? Clearly, we need a mini Caucasus EU situation with Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. But given that, I guess that's the easy out to any answer is, how do you solve an issue? Both countries merge. Both countries merging, or, conquest is bad. But what if all the countries could just get along? Wouldn't that be nice? Couldn't there be like a union of republics, like socialist Soviet republics? Okay, I see where this idea is falling short. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this this little bit of an update into something spicy that has happened. Wait, this was meant to be good news. The good news is the war. They're signing a peace treaty. And that is good. And they might spat about it a little bit more first. but like maybe they'll sign for true peace this time. Speaking of true peace, yeah, if you want to see the thumbnails for today's video, I even though the faces tend to do better than the maps, I think having the maps in the thumbnail is a better description of what we do here on this channel. You know, looking at maps and seeing things this way is very useful in my opinion. And so I think we're going to continue having these like super colorful, fun style maps. But yeah, we're going to see if having a face and the map is better than this. Because even though the face by itself performs the best, I also think it's a bit generic. And so yeah, we're going to take a small hit to our click-through rate to hopefully build more of a brand identity. Is that smart? I guess we'll find out. Speaking of smart, yeah, I have a little fun update, by the way. So if we go to analytics right here, and we see Sunday's video, which was the countries that should annex their neighbors, something interesting happened here, because I put no extra ads on this video, just as another test, and it got $3.10 per 1,000 views. However, what's interesting is the video that I did spam ads on, Greenland held an election, everyone wants independence. The CPM there was $2.69, and the closest explanation I could find is that if we go to my ad slots, I put 15 ads just to see what YouTube would do, right? No one noticed actually seeing them, because you never actually would, but putting 15 ads, most of them got labeled with this flag, where YouTube basically said, we're not actually going to show that ad to people. It's too close to all the other ones. It only actually would show an ad at 13 minutes 14. But still interesting that, yeah, more ads does not necessarily result in more money. So, fun fact. Also, fun fact, while we're outsourcing, being public with our you know, our decisions here, YouTube tells you your best videos for audience retention off the first 30 seconds, which is the critical measure of how many people will watch the rest. And as you can see, British Man ranks constitutional amendments did really good in the first 30 seconds. You know, like kind of fine over the length of the video. Whereas the worst video was Poland military buildup. Is this the future of Europe? And so to be more fair, like compare two news videos here, because I watched this like intro again, and the worst thing I could find is like, I guess you could point out my hair is a little goofy there, but also the green screen is broken. Do you think that's the reason that that did poorly, whereas Canada wanting free trade of itself does well here? So let's watch this video. As you can see, much smoother green screen, much less crazy hair. Is there a good explanation that you can think of as to why this video would be so much more watchable, so above average, and this would be so below average? Let me know. Anyway, yeah, click-through rate is through the roof right now, apparently, and average view duration is down. These two metrics almost always have like a weird anti-correlation, I find. But speaking of anti-correlation, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then I don't know, second channel, don't care. I'm gonna if you're curious as to what the reports look like, this is how I'm gonna upload and compare the thumbnails. And I've got the weirdest thing to share. Yesterday's video did exactly 50-50. I've never seen this before, but both thumbnails did exactly the same, which is proof, I think, that the maps are better. Because all other things being equal, I'd rather have a fun map of Russia to like indicate the vibe of the channel. Anyway, with that said, thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed learning about Armenia's rough geopolitical position. And yeah, I hope that they find some uranium or lithium or something so that they can start to bully other countries into agreeing with them. But for now, I hope you all enjoyed. Second channel, don't care. Bye.